Okay, this is an interview by Linda Jackson on the 18th of July 2014 with Mr. John Weatherall, Cordingly. So could you start by giving me your full name, your place and date of birth?
Yes, my name's John Weatherall, Cordingly. I was born in Wigan, actually Billings Hospital, and I was born on the 2nd of the 2nd, 1944.
Thank you. And can you tell me who in your family served during the First World War?
My grandfather. He was born in Wigan in York Street, which is off the bottom end of Walgate, below the station. And
obviously it's your mum's dad?
Yes.
And what was her name?
Florence.
Okay. And do you know where he enlisted and where he served?
Well, I would imagine that he enlisted in Manchester because he joined the Manchester Regiment, and I mean we have, Lancashire Fusiliers, Lancashire regiments, but for some reason I'm not sure of, he was in the Manchester Regiment. I've got all his records and his number, so I was able to trace things. And he was actually killed in just sort of west of the Somme. It was after the Somme. It was probably Arras, and the nearest place was Bethune, which was the regimental headquarters at the time, very close to the front line. And
do you know what his wartime experience were like? Do you know if there are any letters or anything like that he wrote home? Or?
There are some letters, but I've yet to just put my hands on them. Okay. I'm going to try and get those for you.
Okay, Thank you. And so, so do you know what actually happened to him that day?
Not fully, no, not fully.
Okay. And do you know, did your mum talk, sorry, your mum wouldn't have known him quite, would she?
No.
But are there any family stories or anything like that about what he was like, or do you know anything like what he did for a job before he enlisted?
He was a baker.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. And you've got some photos here. Can you talk us through these photos, who they show?
Yes. Well, obviously, this is my grandfather here, and there's a picture of him. I presume that's in France. This is a picture of him with a squad of men. He is on there, here. Now this photo, I don't know what it is exactly. It's again a group of men from his regiment, and there's two women present. I presume that's in France. I can't really see that was over here, because these men would come from all around the Manchester area. So for them all to meet up, if they were on leave, I think would be very strange. That's my opinion. So I presume that's in France. This photograph is the family grave, the Weatherall grave. It's a double grave, so that goes back quite a long time. And his mother and father are buried there. Now, at the moment, my daughter is doing the family tree, and I'd like to bring that down at a later date,
definitely.
With some more information. There's more than this. This is just the beginning, if you like. This photograph here is a picture of the actual grave of my grandfather. Now, this is a photograph of my mother. She's the only person in the whole family, relatives included, who's been to the grave. Not even my grandmother went to the grave. Mainly, I should think, because she couldn't afford it. To go to France was, in the 20s, 30s, was a big thing. I mean, now people just nip over the weekend. It wasn't like that then. So she's the only person who's been, and she's there at the graveside with his medal. And as I say, she's the only one. But this year, especially because it's 100 years since the start of the First World War, I am planning to go and do exactly what my mother did.
Can you tell me, your mother was very young when her father died?
6 months old.
6 months old. Okay, thanks.
So those are the medals he was awarded, and at a military fair, I got this badge, which is an authentic Manchester Regiment badge. Now also, my grandfather's name is on the cenotaph at the Wigan Parish Church, which was, because they lived in Walgate, was only a walk away, and all the Weatherall family were brought up Church of England, and they all went to the parish church.
So you used to stop there and see his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
When my mum was younger, she always went to the cenotaph every year. I don't think she ever missed. And if she wasn't, there was a couple of times I think when she wasn't well, I went. And obviously when she passed, I go. Now I wear these medals because I'm family, but you wear them on the right hand side. You cannot wear them on the left because they're not my medals. If they were my medals, they'd be here. Because of my grandfather's medals and I'm family, I am allowed to wear those on the right hand side, which I do because I'm very proud.
No, I was going to say, you do. Obviously, this is very important to you. So,
very.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know anything about what your grandmother's experiences were in the First World War at all?
Well, obviously, she was made a widow at a very young age, and she did. There was quite a family of sisters. I do have photographs of those as well. And I think, as families did in those days, they all pulled together. And I think some of the times my mother lived with her Auntie Elizabeth, who they called Bet. And she had a shop on the corner of Taylor Street and York Street. And it was a sort of a grocery shop, a bit like Open All Hours. And she did a lot for my mother, I know that for a fact, because she was a spinster, she never married, and she had a good business, a really good business, and she was quite, to those standards, quite well off. And I know for a fact that she helped my grandmother and my mother a lot. And when she died in 1951, she left my mother a sum of money, which today would be, well, if I gave you that amount of money now, you'd be very pleased. In 1951, it was a lot of money, and that allowed us to move from Apley Bridge, where I was born, where I lived, to Hindley, and we bought, well, my mother bought a big house, and the front room, the lounge, whatever you want to call it, was her place of work. Because I know her auntie put her through an apprenticeship, and she was a fully qualified ladies hairdresser. So she had a trade which carried her forward, and I think that was a legacy that her auntie Bet, as we called her, put her through. And especially later, when my father was in the services in the Second World War in the Middle East, he was away for many long lengths of time, and that allowed her to earn a living as well. So that was a good legacy, and that's how the family pulled together.
That is a nice story, isn't it, of supporting each other, and for her to be able to then earn her own money. It's been really important.
So we had, as a child, I had a good life. Even though a lot of the time my father wasn't there because he was abroad. But again, the family all pulled together. And it was just how things were done.
Yeah, it's a different world.
It
really?
is a different world today,
world.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So you said about what happened after the war. Is there anything else?
Well, after the war, my grandmother went into service.
Oh.
And she worked various places. My mother didn't always live with her.
No, I was going to say, so that's why your aunt was so important.
That's it, exactly.
To help out.
And then my grandmother got married again, and they bought a chicken farm in Dalton, which is just outside of Wigan, in a place called Crow Lane, Dalton, which is just near Ashes Beacon, if you know what I mean. And she lived there for a while, and she often spoke of that. I think those were some happy days. She was a teenager by this time, and she very often spoke very fondly of it. And she went to school at Dalton, and odd times when she was older, when it was a nice day, I'd go down and say, come on, let's have a run out in the car, just me and her, nobody else. And I said, where do you want to go? And it was always Dalton. So this Dalton must have been a happy place for her, and sounds a bit funny really. Well, not to me, but maybe to other people. She used to go and look at the old school, which is still there, and the church on the hill. And we'd walk around the cemetery, and she'd point to people. I went to school with him or her, and used to go dancing with them, and I used to see them. And because she was then in her 80s, a lot of her friends had passed. So, and it was nice to see that she could still relate to these people. She could even tell you conversations that she had. And I went to a barn dance at such a farm, and this would be in the late 20s, early 30s, and she could remember them like they were yesterday. And she was 80 plus then. Which,
happy memories for us.
It was,
they stay with you, don't they? Yeah. Had you ever heard your grandmother talking about the Great War at all?
No, she never.
She never mentioned it.
My grandmother's quite a lively lady, and she was actually married 4 times in her life.
Really? Wow.
But she lived to be 97.
That's
and
quite
she
impressive.
was quite a character. She liked to go out dancing. I never ever saw her without being dressed up and makeup on. Ever. And I mean, I used to go and stay at the house. So it tells you here, this is from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and it says surname Weatherall J, rank private, his service number, date of death 13th of the 4th 1917, says here age unknown, but he was 24, Manchester Regiment, nationality United Kingdom, grave memorial reference J8, Cambrian Military Cemetery.
So he was 24 when he died.
Yes.
Do you know when he signed up, or how old he was when he signed up? That's 1917, isn't it?
I would think he joined at the beginning of the war. I could maybe find out about that. This other piece of paper I've downloaded tells you about the Cambrian Military Cemetery. It's 24 kilometres north of Arras and 8 kilometres east of Bethune on the road to Les Bassy. At one time, the village of Cambrian housed brigade headquarters, but in until the end of the First World War, it was only about 800 metres from frontline trenches.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the front line.
The village contains 2 cemeteries used for Commonwealth burials. The churchyard extension, taken over from French troops in May 1915, and the military cemetery behind the Mayor's House, Cambrian Military Cemetery, often called Cambrian Chateau Cemetery, was begun in February 1915 and used as frontline cemetery until December 1918. Contains many graves of the Battle of Loos, and in Row D there are buried 57 officers and men of the 1st King's Liverpool Regiment who died on the first day of the battle, 25th of September 1915. So these are things you can download from the cemetery. This is just basically the same information but without the photograph of the graves. That's just a plan of the cemetery so you can find the graves.
They're massive, aren't they, these
Oh
war
yes.
cemeteries?
The thing that I'm quite taken aback with is when you look at these cemeteries, I don't know how old they are. When you look at those, everything's neat in rows. All the headstones are white, and the place is immaculate, absolutely immaculate. You can see here from, and so it should be.
It's important, it's looked after, isn't it?
This is just something else. This is ancestry.co.uk, British Army, World War Medal Rolls, Index Cards, 1914 to 1919. And this tells you what
So this relates
to these 2 medals here,
medals.
yes. Yeah. So they tell you they're awarded to Weatherall, John, Manchester Regiment, Private, his number, and this tells you he got the Victory Medal, which is this one, and this British, I don't know, I think that was for serving that one, but this, as you see the bullets, that one is solid silver by the way, and that's the Great War for Civilization, 1914 to 1919, and those are the ribbons. If you ever watch the Armistice Day Parade, you'll see soldiers with medals, and if you look at them, these colours are First World War. Second World War are different colours altogether. If you know about medals, and if you see that colour of a medal and a silver one and a gold one, you know those are the First World War. You don't have to ask or
So can you tell me how you feel about going later in the year? Do you think it will be quite an emotional thing for you? Yeah. Yes,
I do.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, I bear his name just to prove to you. There's my passport, and there's my name.
John Weatherall, Cordingly. Yeah.
Okay. I'm very proud of that. It was quite common then for the first male grandchild born. And as I say, my mum was an only one, and my grandmother never had any more children. Right. My mother was an only one.
So, this was your grandmother's first marriage, was it?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
And as I say, she had quite an eventful life. I always remember her as being a very bubbly, happy person, always very smartly dressed. And she used to come to our house and have her done, of course, you know, a daughter. And she was always off, you know, so where are you off to? I'm going to, you know, a dance at such a place. It was all church stuff, you know. I'm going to such a dance, and I'm going to a domino drive or a window. So she was always out and about. Yeah, she led a good life, but I think at the first it was a very hard life because the pension from the War Department would be very small, and times were hard in the 20s, 30s.
And there must have been a lot of women that were in the same situation.
Oh yes.
You know, or didn't get married like
That's
your
it.
auntie, because there weren't the men about, I guess.
No,
so,
no.
Yeah, difficult experience.
But yeah, like I say, I'm very proud of him, and my father as well. I'm the only one that didn't serve. I actually wanted to go into the RAF as well, and he was in the RAF, and I wanted to be a pilot, but then they wouldn't take people with glasses. Now, if you see the newsreels now, the news, you'll see not Prince Harry, Prince William piloting a helicopter, and you'll see me puts his glasses on. Now you couldn't, when I was like 16, 18, they wouldn't.
Wasn't an option.
Wasn't an option. No, it was out straight away. But that's what I wanted to be.
Inspired by your dad.
So yeah.
Thank you for telling us that story. Is there anything else you want to say about your grandfather, or anything else about your family experiences that you want to mention?
Well, obviously, I've researched into this, and I have books on the First World War, and when you see what went on, it was absolutely horrendous. And if you imagine, you know, coming from a small market town in Lancashire, in Wigan, and going to France and seeing all this, it must have been, well, I just can't express. Must have been monumental, and the carnage, and it was just brutal. And for what? But it's still going on, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately.
Yeah. Still send people out, don't they? And
Yeah,
face
that's right.
Similar horrific experience. And they're also young as well, aren't they?
Yes.
Because I mean, he can't have been more than 21 when he.
24.
No, I was just thinking when he
when he
signed
joined,
up,
yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
he would have been very
That's right.
young, and
Very
you know,
young,
would have been
yeah.
serving with people that were
That's
just
right.
as young, if not even younger.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be a real shock.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
probably the first time he'd been abroad as well.
Well, exactly. Like I say, my mother was is the only one and only of the family and relatives who's been to the grave. But I intend to change that. I've been saying this for a few years, but I think now I've got to do. Not got to. I need to.
Well, it's nice that you are doing it on the centenary year as
Yeah.
well, isn't it? Because there'll be probably extra, you know, parades,
right,
commemorations
yeah.
and things this year as well.
And I'm lucky in the fact that I do own a motorhome, so I'm going to motor over there and spend a bit of time. It'll not be just a quick visit. It'll be, I can go around and see the actual area and get more information as well.
Yeah.
I've got more information which I will supply to you.
Okay, that would be very useful. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.